Considering this is a From Software game, it should be no surprise to anyone that there are dozens of secrets hidden in the nooks and crannies of Shadow of the Erdtree. And like with previous From Software games, there are tons of secrets that still have not been discovered. And in today's video, I want to share with you
Yes, you!
7 undiscovered secrets within Shadow of the Erdtree. Before we get any further into the actual main video, I want to play a little game with you. You don't have to play if you don't want to, but if you do, I challenge you, if you know more than 2 secrets on this list, then please drop a dislike, leave a hate comment, do whatever you want. But if you don't know more than 2 secrets, then please consider leaving a like and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Anyway, I'm not going to dilly-daddly anymore. Please sit back, relax, grab some succulent, juicy, tender and sensational prawns if you want, and enjoy as we delve into these very much undiscovered secrets. Starting off with number 7, have you ever noticed at the start of Messmer's cutscene, his cute little snake decides to start flicking its tongue? Now at first glance this might just seem like some insignificant design choice, but you'd be completely wrong. There is actually a significant meaning behind this. I have a cute little snake of my own. Little Murgo, who's definitely not named after a certain wet nurse, decides he likes to flick his tongue in the air all the time. Basically, the reason why snakes do this is because they're tests in the air for different smells and potential threats. That in of itself is some quite compelling evidence that that was the design choice for what Messmer's snake was doing at that very moment. But what adds even further onto this is Messmer's next words. He says, "Thou tarnished it seemeth." Not only does this tell us that the tarnished has some freaky smell to him, but it also gives us more insight into the symbiotic relationship between Messmer and his snakes. Bonfire VN did this really good video where it showed the model of Messmer without his clothes on, which sounds really freaky, but moving on, you can see that the snakes are burrowed into his flesh. The snakes and Messmer seem to be one, which had only ever been really hinted at considering they were called his ever constant. But with the fact he can actually feel what the snakes are feeling, sensation and perhaps otherwise, I think this is completely concrete now. For number 6, did you know that the worm guys in the Finger Ruins actually have mouths all over them? Now normally when you're fighting them they're constantly attacking you so you don't get to fully look at them, but with the aid of the camera mod and invisibility you can actually see them for what they are, and it is really disturbing. At first glance they've just got this mouth at the top, but then when you look at their back they've got these mouths all over them. I think the answer to why they were put here is very simple. Mattia and everything surrounding her is very much inspired by cosmic horror. Mattia herself is this amalgamation monstrosity, so it's only fitting her followers and perhaps even children would look exactly the same, with grotesque mouths growing all over them. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they opened up their gob and it was just eyes lining them like Ludwig. For number 5, I want to talk about something that I have talked about in the past, but I thought it was very fitting to put on this list considering I haven't ever heard anyone talk about this within the community. Have you ever noticed how similar both the Elden Beast and Mattia's boss rooms look? Mattia's is located on this endless lake, and so is the Elden Beast's. The only real differences are, of course, the boss, the colouring of the area, and the fact instead of Erdtrees like the case with the Elden Beast, Mattia's boss Irina has these sort of horn-like structures which go up into the sky. Now before I'd sort of made this passing comment that maybe these little horn things were actually the roots of the Erdtrees. It was just a batshit insane theory, but like a lot of people suggested, I do believe there's a high possibility that these are actually the roots of the Finger Ruins. Now a question you might be wondering is just why on earth is this the case? Why have they got such a similar boss arena? It's genuinely uncanny how similar they seem. Well, I believe it has to do with the fact that Mattia is a dazzling daughter of the Greater Will, while the Elden Beast is a vassal for the Greater Will. Now, of course, you could go down the line of thought that perhaps the Greater Will replaced Mattia with the Elden Beast. But I actually prefer the idea that perhaps it wasn't the Greater Will that sent the Elden Beast crashing into the ground. We know the Elden Beast took on the form of an Elden Star and crashed into the lands between, and yet we also know that Mattia was the first star to crash into the lands between. This means that Mattia predates the Elden Beast, and given the fact item descriptions do tell us that the two fingers are related and take answers from the greater will, and yet inside of Shadow of the Erdtree we get confirmation that this is a lie. Who's to say that this isn't also a lie, and not just a part of Mattia's grand master plan, whatever that might be? For number 4, did you know that Miquella and Mesmer might have a more manipulative relationship than you might have thought? Inside of Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, inside of cut content, it actually has a line where Mesmer says, "Miquella spoke of thee." And after that line was removed in the full release of Shadow of the Erdtree, there's only one line that suggests a connection between Miquella and Mesmer. That being when Leda actually calls Mesmer Sir Mesmer, Sir when someone has been knighted. And considering Leda is basically Yandere simulator for Elden Ring, everything important that she speaks to us about has been echoed to her by Miquella. So why would Sir Mesmer's title be any different? And once you start putting this all together, everything to do with Mesmer makes so much more sense. I personally have wondered for a long time why suddenly, after eons of being in the Lands of Shadow, Mesmer gives up hope. Now some people have said it's because we arrive, and to a degree I think that played a part in it. Especially considering his very own mother Marika has ordered him for eons to slaughter those who do not have any grace, and yet she is bestowing lordship upon someone who is graceless. Or at least, in his eyes, graceless. But I do think it's a bit too much of a coincidence that as soon as Miquella comes about in the Lands of Shadow, that is when Mesmer fully starts to change his mindset. I don't know, maybe I'm reaching, but I do think there is some tomfoolery going on towards Mesmer by Miquella. For number 3, did you know that Vare actually spoils Mohg's little bewitching secret inside of the base game? Vare the White Mask is this fanatical guy that just seems to be absolutely obsessed with the Lord of Blood, and definitely does not have Stockholm Syndrome from Mohg absolutely kidnapping him on the battlefield. But regardless of that, Vare on many occasions talks about Mohg's love, the same way people talk about Miquella's love and Miquella's compassion. We know from Ansbach, inside of Shadow of the Erdtree, that he knew of Miquella's enchantment upon Mohg. Now, I'm not saying that Vare actually knew that Miquella should be on the same list that most of Hollywood's directors should be on, but I do think this was a hint towards some very hidden lore that was going to be revealed inside of Shadow of the Erdtree. Not to mention how fanatical Mohg is throughout his boss fight, and through all the descriptions we know. It's very heavily hinted, but this is just another really hidden detail that exists within Vare's quest. For number 2, this is a secret I have not seen talked about once anywhere, and although the other secrets on this list are quite big, I think this is even bigger. If you look inside of Miquella and Radahn's boss fight, you'll notice that Miquella has his eyes shut. Now you might be thinking, oh, this is just some demigod shenanigans, but I don't think this is what is going on. If we look at Radahn, his eyes are open. And if we actually go back to his original boss fight inside of Elden Ring's base game, you'll notice the eyes are actually different. In the base game, Radahn's eyes have these red stripes in them, but they're actually white. And yet inside of Shadow of the Erdtree, he has these vibrant yellow eyes that are really prominent. The very same shade of yellow that Miquella's spectral body is made out of. I think this is all too much of a coincidence, and we're never actually given a lot of information on how Miquella is actually controlling Radahn. But this might be the answer. When we fight Radahn, maybe it's not actually Radahn we're fighting, but instead Miquella projecting himself from within Radahn, controlling him. And when that red aura comes about, that might actually be Radahn trying to fight off the influence. We know a lot of power inside of Elden Ring comes from the eyes. You've got all the Scar Seals, you've got Melina, you've got the Glowmite Queen version of her, you've got Ranni, so on and so on. Power is in the eyes, and I think this is no exception. I believe this is an answer as to how Miquella is actually controlling Radahn. Maybe I'm off on this, I'd really love to hear what you all have to say. For number 1, I have a secret for you that honestly had the same level of shock value as when I first drove through Smethwick and realised Danny G was completely right. It is an absolute shithole. It's become quite common knowledge that Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree's map and the base game can be connected together to form a real map, a full, complete map. but I actually believe that everyone has it wrong in how it's positioned. When trying to piece it all together, a lot of people have actually placed the map so it lines up and the suppressing tower is in the middle. And while you could do it like this, I don't actually believe this is the case for multiple reasons. For one, this was brought to my attention like 5 months ago by a really amazing comment, and I literally remembered it a few days ago and it's stuck in my head ever since. Inside of the Mountaintop of the Giants map fragment item description, it talks about a mountain to the east that looms over even the Fire Giant's Forge. Except when we look in that direction from the Fire Giant's Forge, it is nowhere to be found. We know Marika hid away the Lands of Shadow, and I believe this is why we cannot see this eastern mountain. But if Marika really did veil away this mountain, the best candidate would be the Jagged Peak. And yet the map everyone seems to be corroborating and saying is definitive has the Jagged Peak to the south of the Mountaintop of the Giants. So whatever mountains to the east can't be the Jagged Peak, unless that map was wrong. So I've created a new map, and I believe this version of the map makes a lot more sense. For example, Rao Ruins is directly connected to Caelid, which are both heavily connected to the Scarlet Rot. Not to mention, where these points actually fuse, there is this random cliff face that leads down onto Radahn's boss fight. But if you then connect Rao Ruins, it all lines up. Not to mention, Rao Ruins is full of these long heights, which then drop down. There's a lot of similarities, and I genuinely believe that this is the true combination of these maps. I truly believe this, but I'm really curious to see what you all have to say about this. This has been added post-recording, but I meant to say, to do with the suppressing tower, the reason why that really doesn't matter is because it seems to have been from a really, really long time ago. And if you don't know, in our world, and in Elden Ring, considering you can just yoink away the Lands of Shadow, tectonic plates move, the lands move and shift. Perhaps at one point in time the suppressing pillar was in the middle of the map, but considering what we've just talked about, I think that was probably a long, long time ago. Sadly everyone, that is the end of the video. If you did enjoy the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. How many secrets did you get? Did you get any? Did you get a few? Did you get 2? Really curious to see what you all got. Anyway, I'm not going to hold you any longer. I really hope you have a great rest of your day, and may you find your worth in the waking world. Goodbye everyone.